Hi, so my name's Suzanne Day, or Anne Wigglebottom is my pen name, and I run a charity and a business for stopping domestic violence, and I have 3 websites, and one of my websites for my charity is www.stopalldomesticviolenceinc.com. I've actually written about Stockholm Syndrome because I was actually a victim of Stockholm Syndrome. I was continually raped, beaten, tortured, burnt, stabbed, kidnapped, starved, drowned, raped, beaten. And I also visited my abuser in jail afterwards because I was too traumatized to go. I was too traumatized to leave him, and I actually visited him in Long Bay for 6.5 years because I was too frightened. And it's called Stockholm Syndrome. So today I'm actually going to read a little bit about what Stockholm Syndrome is, because it's actually happening. It's something that happens to trauma victims, and it's something that is actually happening in the world today with all the abuse that's going on worldwide. Stockholm Syndrome is actually happening worldwide. So I'd like to get this information out for people. Okay, so what is Stockholm Syndrome? So what is Stockholm Syndrome? It is a psychological state or set of behaviours that a victim or a group of victims, and it can be like the whole world at the moment, will have when they experience ongoing domestic violence, kidnapping, captivity, violence, threats, control. And it also happens to battered person syndrome. It's very common in domestic violence, or kidnapping, or any really traumatic event. Okay, and it also happens in hostage situations, and the abuser will use coercion and control and false information, misleading information to confuse and to silence the victims. And often victims will appease or please their captive in order to get their safety back again. And they will try to work with or do things to please their abuser, thinking that they'll be released or helped, or that things will go back to normal. The victims will feel fear, terror, anger, disbelief at their abuser who tormented them. They will be unable to escape and will feel trapped in some way, usually isolated from others or society. And sometimes the relationship with the abuser will be positive, and sometimes it will be violent and controlling. And Stockholm Syndrome is actually a coping mechanism that survivors use to survive the experience that they're having to go through. And victims will develop trauma as a result of captivity that they're experiencing, and from this later on in their life. And in captivity, and in captive stage, there will be significant threat to their life or a loved one's life. And victims will also feel gratitude to the abuser for any kindness or sympathy that's shown to them, and thinking that the abuser is really on their side and cares about them. But the fact is they do not, and this is all part of the game that the abuser and the controller is playing. And it's actually called love bombing. It's like you're constantly made to feel safe, and then you're constantly violated and abused, and it's like a cycle and it happens in domestic violence, and it also happens in captivity, and it also happens kidnapping, and it's happening in the world. If you notice what governments are doing, this is the behaviour that they're doing. Okay, and it's a But the fact is, this is all part of the game that the abuser is playing to confuse and control the victim, and it's to keep them quiet and in line and not causing any trouble for them. And they will find that the goalpost continually will change. The rules will continually change again and again. And if you notice, that's happening at the moment in the world. All the laws are changing. What they want us to do is changing. This is all the techniques. And victims will often feel special and that the abuser has saved their life in some way and not killed them. And they'll actually feel grateful that they haven't been killed. And it's surprising to others how victims of these crimes behave and how they feel bonded and special for their abusers, that actually, and how they often defend the abusers. And they will not want to leave or speak to police and be witnesses at trials to testify against them in any way. And this is actually very normal, and it's the way that they act in this situation, and it happens a lot. And often domestic violence victims will refuse to leave their abusers and will want to stay with them and support them even though they're abused over and over again. And victims will experience mental health issues, flashbacks, post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of the violence that they experience. And after years of this abuse, the abuser could actually leave the door open, and the abused person would actually just sit there and wouldn't leave. And I can relate to that because that happened to me. I just physically couldn't move. They'll actually want to stay with their abusers, and also they can feel unable to mentally go there. It's like they're physically stuck, and they're stuck in trauma, and then unable to leave due to violence and threats against them and their family members. And they will think the rescuer and the police are the enemy, and they stay on the abuser's side. And recovery is found once that they're in safety, and then what a counsellor will do is reconstruct the trauma story so that they can begin to heal, and to it's really helpful to use their own words, to do something creative, to write, to sing, whatever, to get the feelings out and how they were made to feel. That's part of the healing journey. And the next step after that is to restore connection with family and friends in their community. But the first step is always safety. And there's 4 conditions that have to exist for Stockholm Syndrome. 1, a perceived threat to your life or someone that you love. Kindness at times in between violent outbursts. 3, isolation from others. 4, the inability to escape from the situation. And in my journey, I did a lot of reading, and I found a book that talks all about Stockholm Syndrome, and it's this one, Trauma and Recovery, by Judith Herman, and she talks a lot about Stockholm Syndrome and how to recover from it. So that could be helpful for anyone that wants to help someone who's in this situation. Okay, thank you.